What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you'll forgive my different background. I know it is not my normal situation, my normal setup. I'm on the road. I've been talking about this a little bit on social media over the last couple of weeks. I'm headed to Pebble Beach to play. I'm very excited, going to play around at Spanish Bay at Pebble Beach, obviously. So if you have any advice, I'm certainly open to it. You can hit me up on any level of social media. I'm on X, Instagram, and Threads at RJ Ochoa. I am on TikTok at rj.ochoa. You can search for me on Blue Sky. I don't remember my username, but it's just RJ Ochoa. If email is more your thing, rj.ochoa at sbnation.com is how you can contact me. You can also follow me, of course, here in the Bleacher Report app if that's where you're watching right down below. I'm live every single Tuesday and Thursday. That includes when I'm traveling. That includes when things are going on. It's a very busy time of year. There's a lot happening. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get to it. Today is Tuesday, March the 11th, 2025. The Dallas Cowboys, before the new league year, this is technically new league year eve. The NFL's new league year officially begins on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time, which means this has been the legal tampering period. Historically, this has been a quiet time for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, maybe you're rolling your eyes at that statement. Maybe you still feel like it has been a quiet time for the Dallas Cowboys, but the Cowboys, relative to history, relative to that context, not relative to what we deem to be appropriate here, but relative to how they have behaved in the past, the Cowboys have been active. I use that word purely in a literal sense, purely in a this is the definition of the word sense. That's obviously what literal means. They have been more active than they have been in the past. So we're going to hand out some free agency grades and decisions, or grades on decisions, that the Cowboys have made, not just on new players that they brought in, but on players who they have brought back, on players who they let walk. Ultimately, there's a lot to get to. And in case you're confused, or in case you're overwhelmed, or in case you are not able to keep tabs on what is happening across the NFL or with the Dallas Cowboys, that's where we come in at Blogging the Boys. This is quite literally our job. What you're looking at here is our tracker at Blogging the Boys. If you go to our homepage, bloggingtheboys.com, it's right there smack in the middle, and we're tracking everything, as you can see. This is all Dallas Cowboys free agency rumors, news, et cetera, et cetera. So these are the free agent signings or re-signings that the Cowboys have made. So this includes new players and players brought back. Obviously, we knew last week that the Cowboys are bringing Ochoa back. They obviously brought back C.J. Goodwin, Wanya Thomas, Brock Hoffman, Tyrus Wheat. I don't think we can really give them a lot of credit for that. And I do want to say, by the way, I know my audio is a little bit different because I don't have my standard studio equipment, but just heads up on all of that. Appreciate those of you in the Bleacher Report app and on YouTube who are powering through. All of that was kind of standard protocol outside of the Ochoa thing. I know that we have put the bar very low for the Dallas Cowboys, but I maintain that they deserve some credit for getting a long-term deal done with Osa and not having to go the franchise tag route. But we've already talked about that. That's water under the bridge. Since we last spoke, Marquise Bell's coming back, also on a new deal that is impressive, again, relative to context. I promise I'm not trying to just lower the bar here. But the Cowboys have been active. Trent Sieg was kind of the first foray into activity, if you want to call it that, when the legal tampering period opened. Obviously, they didn't have to tamper with Trent Sieg since he's been on their roster, but you get the point. So Trent Sieg's coming back. The Cowboys have clearly focused on keeping their special teams group together, by the way. C.J. Goodwin was one of the first names obviously brought back as well. But as you can see here, for their first external addition, the Cowboys agreed to terms with Javonte Williams, running back formerly of the Denver Broncos. And I'm going to take this off your screen for a moment here because the Dallas Cowboys, all right, to understand this here, and I don't know why I'm I'm still small. What's going on here? Let's see here. I think I should be good. Let's try putting this up on your screen. There we go. There, that was, sometimes being away from the home studio comes with a few challenges. So I appreciate those of you putting up with me. But the Cowboys landed. You can't say signed if you want to be technical, you want to be literal. You can't say the word signed because those things have not technically happened. We are still technically in the legal tampering window, but the Cowboys agreed terms with 4 external free agents. The Cowboys have been the last team in the NFL to land an external free agent in each of the last 2 years. That's not made up. That's not exaggerating. That's not being silly or dragging this team for no reason. The Cowboys have quite literally been the last team in the NFL in 2023 and 2024 to bring in new blood. That is not them this year. And so, again, we're the analogy I've used a lot has been when Pam helps Michael Scott when they're developing the Michael Scott paper company, and she tells him when he's overwhelmed, look, just put on pants, right? Like, let's just kind of get out of bed and let's start this day. And that's kind of where we're at with the Dallas Cowboys. Hey, just go get an external free agent. just go get somebody. And that's really what the Cowboys have done here. If you think about it, Javonte Williams grading. We're obviously here to offer some grades because I don't think that, the Wanye Thomas and Marquise Bell moves and all those things are really requiring of grades. Javonte Williams, I'm going to give a C+, B- if I'm feeling particularly generous. It's spring break. I'll give you a grade on a curve so you can feel awesome headed on your vacation or whatever the case may be. Maybe you're heading to Pebble Beach. C+, B-. The Cowboys ultimately needed a running back. There was a great tweet from a good friend of mine, Marcus Mosier, does a lot of great work covering the NFL, covering the Dallas Cowboys. And I loved the way he put it. The Cowboys needed someone. The Cowboys needed an NFL quality running back. They did not have one on their roster. I don't mean any disrespect, obviously, to Deuce Vaughn. Could they have brought back Rico Dowdle? Sure. And this isn't really against Rico Dowdle. I'm fine that they didn't. I'm fine that they said, you know what, Javonte Williams, let's go. I like that Brian Schottenheimer is starting to get his kind of fingerprints on this run game. We've been talking a lot about that, how he's going to return this group to being able to run the ball effectively and blah, 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 blah. So that being said, I'm good with this. He's not going to, again, shock anybody. And we've seen the Cowboys get these low-level running backs before. Rico Dowdle doesn't really fit into the box of acquisitions, but you could put Zeke Elliott in that box last year. You could put Royce Freeman. You could put, even going back to Alfred Morris, I think the Cowboys don't like to take these big swings at the running back position unless it's spending the 4th overall pick, obviously, on it. So I'm very good with Javonte Williams. I imagine the Cowboys will at the very least draft a running back. Maybe they'll even draft 2. I'd love Cam Scatterboo. Hello, Forks Up. I would love Travion Henderson. I would love Quinshon Judkins. I mean, pick your guy. There are a lot of running backs, and if you pair running back to be determined with Javonte Williams, then I would grade the position as a whole as a B+, A-. Now you're kind of on the precipice of flirting with an A. Obviously, depends on which running back you're drafting, but this is the first step. This is the first step in the right direction. So C+, B-, again, if we're being overly generous here. And that sounds harsh, but these are the kinds of moves that we want the Cowboys to make. We want them, I didn't mean to do that there. That's my bad. We want them to fill holes, and that's what free agency is about. We want them to fill holes before they get to the NFL draft. We also have compensatory picks to get to, by the way. They were awarded 4. My gosh. Are we still live? Can anybody hear me out there? Is everybody here? That was wild. Let's see. Making sure we're good here because that was an intense. DeAndre Hopkins is joining the Baltimore Ravens. I now see that happening here. Okay, so we're good. That was crazy what happened with that here. In fact, let me make sure that this is good here because that was unexpected. Okay, we were off there, but we're back. Okay, thank you to people for telling me. So that being said, A+ is where we're looking to get from a running back room perspective with a draft pick acquisition. But for now, the Cowboys, I think C+, B- for Javonte Williams. You can't ask for more than that this time of year. And I know that you're going to roll your eyes at that. But again, what I was saying before the internet tried to crash this whole thing was we want the Cowboys to address holes before they become holes. Now, they've lost some players that have created holes in the process, but this is addressing the running back position so you aren't pigeonholed into anything come NFL draft time. So that was a lot of talk about Javonte Williams. Let's get back to what the Cowboys have done. Obviously, late on Monday evening, the Cowboys that's not what I meant to highlight here. The Cowboys got another on day 1 of free agency. The Dallas Cowboys had not just 1, but 2 additions, adding an offensive lineman by way of Robert Jones of the Miami Dolphins. I think just a C. Like, I don't have a C+ to kind of, bend this towards, obviously. Robert Jones is an okay interior lineman, and just a depth standpoint, a depth player at this point for the Cowboys. I think right now, if we had to formulate a Dallas Cowboys offensive line from left to right, we would probably go Tyler Guyton, Tyler Smith, Cooper Beebe, Brock Hoffman, Terrence Steele, right? And so Robert Jones kind of gives you some more flexibility, gives you some depth, gives you a guy who has started in the NFL. I mean, there's not a lot to kind of be blown away by here, I think. And so ultimately, again, you're adding depth so that you aren't stuck when it comes to the draft. we're good there. So let's get to Tuesday's action here. The Cowboys agreed to terms with defensive tackle Solomon Thomas, coming off of a stint, obviously, with the New York Jets, formerly the 3rd overall pick in the NFL draft. That was now 8 years ago. But the Jets part of things is where this is significant. Andrew Whitecotton is the new Dallas Cowboys defensive line coach, obviously worked with the Jets in the same capacity, and therefore worked with Solomon Thomas. I love this move. Now, this isn't I love this move. This is going to change everything about how the Cowboys are operating defensively and along the interior, et cetera, et cetera. But when we all woke up on Tuesday morning, it was Osadigizua and Mazi Smith. You needed somebody. You needed a stable veteran. You needed somebody who has been there, who has done that. And I like deferring to Andrew Whitecotton. I like deferring to one of your new staffers and saying, who do you like? What do you like? What can you do? What can you bring? Who can you bring? What can you add to this group and to this room to make it in your own image? So I like that the Cowboys are delegating some of that responsibility to some of their new staffers. Again, it's not difficult to draw the line between these two particular dots. So here I'm going to go B. I think it's a B, maybe even B plus if I'm in a particularly solid mood relative to context. Again, filling holes. This is a deep defensive tackle draft class. And the Cowboys, obviously, depending on how you evaluate Chauncey Golston, is another point of depth that they had over the past along the interior of the defensive line. We've seen the Cowboys have a number of different people come in through that position group over the last couple of years. So I'm good with this. You add some depth, and you can add by way of the NFL draft as well. And all of a sudden, there isn't an enormous amount of pressure on not just Osadigizua, but on Mazi Smith. It's unfortunate. We all acknowledge that Mazi has not developed into the player that his draft capital would suggest or almost require him to be at this point in time. That being said, you have to address the reality of the moment, and that means you go out, you get Solomon Thomas. I'm very good with that. That is a very solid B in my estimation. Let's get back to our tracker over at Blogging the Boys. On Tuesday afternoon, this isn't an external edition, but the Cowboys did bring back KaVontae Turpin, and the reason this is notable, is because it was a long-term deal that KaVontae Turpin got. It was a 3-year deal that they got for KaVontae Turpin, and the Cowboys did not have to place the second-round tender on him. It had been reported by the Dallas Morning News a couple of weeks ago that was maybe where this was ultimately going to go. The Cowboys are going to place the tender on him. I love this. I'm so happy that the Cowboys got a long-term deal done, and I think they deserve credit here. Now, believe me, I am not shy about criticizing the Dallas Cowboys, and I will not hold back when I feel that they deserve it. I think that my career has a lot of examples that prove that point, but I think that the Cowboys deserve some credit here in a bare bones way. Don't get me wrong, but the Cowboys did not have to do the franchise tag thing with Osadigizua. They did not have to place any tender on KaVontae Turpin because they got a long-term deal done with him. This proves in a literal, objective sense, again, we're talking just the bare bones truth of things, that they are doing more than last year. Look, we can penalize the 2000 whatever Cowboys forever based on how they behaved in 2024. There's no defense for that. It was insane. It was unbelievable. It was arrogant. It was malpractice of the highest order. And I'm not saying get over it, don't think about it ever again. What I am saying is this is a new year, and we have to judge who they are based off of what they're doing right now. Now, that can provide context for us. Certainly, I think that that's the case for all history. But that being said, last year was last year. We acknowledge it was piss poor management from the Dallas Cowboys in every single way, shape, and form. That is not how they're behaving this year. Now, there are definitely things that I would like to see them do still, and there are definitely moves that I would like to see them make. I'm definitely bummed that somebody like Jordan Lewis got away. But if we evaluate the situation at hand, and if we look at what has happened, they beat the franchise tag deadline with Osadigizua. They did not have to go the tender route with KaVontae Turpin. That shows a level, dare I say, of initiative. That shows a level of doing some work, of caving a little bit on your side as a franchise. Again, nobody's given them any sort of prize for this, and nobody's saying that they're doing anything other than their jobs. But again, you couldn't even say that they were doing their jobs last year, which is kind of the difference in disposition that I think is fair to acknowledge is happening in front of us. So the KaVontae Turpin thing for me gets an A. You took care of a homegrown player. You took care of a dude who came from the USFL. Obviously, he's a local guy from the TCU standpoint, a player who has really kind of proven to be something special that you have identified. We'll obviously we're yet to see him have a consistent role on offense. Maybe that is coming, but at the very least, you continue to employ the most dynamic returner in the NFL. You got it done. So kudos to the Cowboys. That is an A for me. Now let's go back to the tracker. Last move to talk about here is the Cowboys on Tuesday afternoon brought in a new defensive end, Peyton Turner, former first-round draft pick. I think that this is we don't know if the Cowboys are going to bring back DeMarcus Lawrence. I think right now it kind of feels like it's not going to happen. We'll see. You need bodies. You need somebody that's kind of really all this checks for me. So this is kind of a C as well. And I recognize that you might be looking at this list and saying, okay, RJ, well, you gave the Javonte Williams thing a C+. You gave the Rob Jones thing a C flat. You gave the Solomon Thomas thing a B+, but you gave the Peyton Turner thing a C. So you're talking about of the external additions, the ones that you were hyping up, RJ. Javonte Williams is a B. We've got a C for Rob Jones. We've got a B+ for Solomon Thomas. We've got a C for Peyton Turner. So this is not really, or these aren't really grades that we're, taking home to mom and dad at the end of the semester and feeling super pumped about. That being said, I'm okay with that disposition. Again, I'm still mad and I still have problems and I still have things that I want to see be done differently. But look at it from a positional standpoint. Forget the names for a second. The names matter. I don't mean to say that they're insignificant or anything like that. But they have so far, before the new league year, through just the legal tampering window, which is historically not a period where they do a lot of work. In this particular window, they have addressed running back. They have addressed the interior of the offensive line, they've addressed the interior of the defensive line, and they've addressed pass rusher, right? They have technically checked those boxes. They have brought in bodies so that they are not stuck. And we cannot, all right, I'm talking to all of us here, we cannot talk out of both sides of our mouth. We cannot say, okay, you don't have to be super aggressive in free agency. I'm starting to really hate the term selectively aggressive. We cannot say you don't have to be super aggressive. Just do some normal things. And then when they do these kind of normal things, get pissed off. Now, you may feel that these aren't normal things. You may still feel that this is below normal, right? I'm not going to fight you on that. But what I'm saying is we are much closer to normal at this point in time, right? Like we are so much closer to normal here in 2025 than this team was with their behavior through the first 2 days of legal tampering last year. And again, being better than the 2024 Dallas Cowboys is not the goal. It's not the expectation. Nobody is saying that, but they are at the very least operating and acting like a tried and true, legitimate NFL franchise, NFL front office. So as a whole, from a collective standpoint, I think we have to give them a grade like a C+, which is passing, right? Like at the very least, that is passing. Now, before we move off of the free agency topic specifically and get to the compensatory picks, we do have to grade their letting of players leave. You do see rumors. We have a few there. NFL Network Shane Slater reported that Rico Dowdle might be out, which makes sense given Javonte Williams. The Dre Greenlaw and Charvarius Ward things popped up initially on Monday, but they obviously have found new homes, so those things aren't happening. We'll actually take those off of the tracker at Blogging the Voice. But all the best to Rico Dowdle, wherever he ultimately winds up. I think it feels safe to say that we'll all be rooting for him. But he is likely going to be joining this list, which is former Cowboys who are officially headed elsewhere. And we have three names to discuss so far. Jordan Lewis is... Man, this is just a tough scene. It was a really, really tough pill to swallow, obviously, that Jordan Lewis left $10 million a year. At the time that this deal was negotiated, he was the highest paid nickel corner in the NFL, a title that I think he deserves and has deserved. He was arguably the best slot corner in the NFL last year. And so I can't say enough good things about Jordan Lewis and what he's done and who he's been. He has grinded absolutely for almost a decade with the Dallas Cowboys. And I don't know if this will lay in with people, but I mean this in the most complimentary way possible to both players. He is kind of this I saw a good friend of mine, Bobby Belt, said he's that win for this generation of Cowboys. I'm not going to push back on that a lot, but I think he's this generation's Orlando Scandrick, to keep it kind of positional. Just, Orlando was a 5th-round pick. And I mean, Jordan wasn't that far down, obviously. He was a 3rd-round pick, but has survived. I mean, didn't have arms long enough for Chris Richard, right? He wasn't Chidobe Awuzie in his draft class. He obviously had Byron Jones ahead of him. I mean, talking about Trayvon Diggs coming in, Deron Bland coming in, like different head coaches. He has survived so much and just been a point of consistency. He's been so much fun to root for. He was never, ever, ever soft. He had such a manner about him that he would just ball out and give every single part of him. And so I will miss him. The Jaguars got a really, really, really good player, and I'm bummed to see him leave. I'm happy that he got the bag, and I will root for him always. He is not the only Cowboy, though, who is headed to Jacksonville. Chuma Edoga is leaving, and so if we're grading the Cowboys decision to move on from them relative to price, because that obviously matters. I think Jordan Lewis, I'm going to give the Cowboys kind of maybe a C plus, B minus. I know some people feel like, that was a bit rich for them relative to Jordan Lewis, but if you're clearing up all this cap space, I mean, you can't tell me you have all this cap space and you have nothing to do with it. I mean, I would have been more than fine giving that deal to Jordan Lewis, just to go on record about it. I'm okay. I think we all are. The Cowboys moving on from Chuma Edoga, but the last one that broke late on Monday night certainly hurts a little bit, and Chauncey Golston leaving for the New York Giants. Now, if you watch my streams or my post-game shows, which also air live in the Bleacher Report app and live on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel as well, I've been saying for months now that Chauncey Golston was having a really, really, really underrated season, and the New York Giants obviously recognized that, and good for Chauncey. He was a part of the 2021 draft class, obviously, that brought Micah Parsons and Osa Odighizuwa. They obviously made a big deal about their final game in Week 18. It's a bummer to lose him, and not an expensive deal, under $20 million for the life of it. And again, if you've got all this cap space and you can't, bend for a homegrown player who has earned a legit payday that isn't overwhelming, I mean, who are you going to pay? So I'm going to grade the Cowboys' unwillingness to give Chauncey a deal as a C minus. Cowboys should have found a way to get that deal done and establish that higher point of depth, along their defensive line, because Chauncey Golston, pretty versatile too, obviously can do a number of different things. So all told, I think it's been a successful free agency period so far for the Cowboys. Relative to context, again, I don't like when people say on social media, they'll say things like, well, if you were expecting the Cowboys to act differently, like, that's on you. None of us were expecting it. Nobody is shocked. I mean, I would be shocked if there is somebody, but in my experience, nobody is shocked by the indifference the Cowboys have shown. It's just disappointing, right? It's nobody's sitting here being like, can you believe that the Cowboys aren't doing anything in free agency? How shocking, how surprising. I'm stunned. I cannot believe this. That's nobody's mindset. The collective mindset, I believe, I don't want to speak on behalf of a collective, but the collective mindset is, this is frustrating. It should not be this way. You should not be doing this, et cetera, et cetera. Now, they are, I don't want to say calming us down, but they are doing some adult-like things. And so, these are rocky waters, but they're waters that we can sort of survive and thrive in, if that makes sense. They did get a bit of good news, as I mentioned, on Tuesday afternoon. The compensatory picks across the NFL were announced, which makes sense. Obviously, the league getting ready for the new league year to officially begin on Wednesday. So the Cowboys, as you can see from my headline at blogontheboys.com, were awarded 4 compensatory picks. In case you don't know what this is, the quick TLDR is when you let players walk in free agency and they get paid somewhere else, that factors into the secret formula that the NFL keeps, and they ultimately spit out compensatory picks. The Cowboys love compensatory picks because it gives them more cheap labor and excuses to not be active in free agency, because they don't want to contaminate the compensatory formula. So that is partly why the Cowboys behave the way that they do. But the Cowboys began Tuesday with 6 picks overall of the NFL draft. So 6 plus 4 means they now have 10 picks in the draft. So the Cowboys picked up 4 picks, as noted, 3 of them in the 5th round and 1 in the 6th. These are the picks the Cowboys have at the moment, or not the, well, yeah, I guess at the moment, technically, in the NFL draft by round. They obviously have their 1st round pick, their 2nd round pick, their 3rd round pick. They don't have their 4th round pick. Shout out to Jonathan Mingo, now and always. Then they have their 5th round pick, their original, and they received, as I mentioned, 3 different compensatory picks. They have their own original 6th round pick, and that 6th round pick that is a compensatory selection that they received. They don't have, there's some confusion floating around out here. I know we've talked about this before. They do not have their original 7th round draft pick. If you recall, last year in the 1st round, when the Cowboys moved down in the 1st round with the Detroit Lions, yes, they did pick up a 3rd round pick that ultimately became Cooper Beebe, but they sent their 7th round draft pick back to the Lions. That was during the 1st round of last year's draft. So the Cowboys didn't have a 7th round pick in the 25 draft for a few months, until the Jonathan Mingo trade, when they received, obviously, Jonathan Mingo for a 4th round pick, but they also received Carolina's 7th round draft pick that originally belonged to Kansas City. So that's the 7th round pick the Cowboys have. If you look at these from an overall perspective, you're talking about picks 12, 44, 76, 149, and then these are the comp picks in the 5th round, 170, 171, 174. Think about that, by the way. 170, 171, 172, 173, 174. In a span of 5 picks, the Cowboys will pick 3 times. That's crazy when you really think about it. So I imagine that they will utilize these to move around. But we said that. I talked about the 21 draft that brought Micah and Osa and Chauncey. Cowboys had 10 picks in that draft after moving down in the first round then as well, when they went from 10 to 12 and ultimately took Micah Parsons. We said there's no way they're going to pick 10 times. And sure enough, the Cowboys sat and they picked 10 times. That's kind of the way the Cowboys go. But their 6th round draft pick, their first one, because they have 2 as mentioned, is 188, then 211, and that final selection as of now, the one that comes from Carolina, is 247. So you're talking about the Cowboys, as we knew, have 3 picks in the top 100. This is going to be just a brutal wait. I mean, right here, there's just, think about it for a second. You're talking about, you got to go almost twice as many picks, right? After the Cowboys pick whoever they're going to pick at 76 overall, they got to wait almost 76 more picks before they pick again. I mean, what's 76 double? That's 152. I mean, so you literally almost have to wait that exact same amount of time, which is where all these picks have to come in handy. You cannot sit here and tell me, Dallas Cowboys of the future, that you could not get back into the 4th round. You have enough ammunition here that you've been given by way of your compensatory picks. And when you sent that 4th round draft pick to Jonathan Mingo, your thought process, the thing you love to talk about, was we're going to receive compensatory picks. We're going to get these comp picks later on down the road. So we're going to have the necessary ammunition, the necessary treasure chest of draft selections, whatever, to ultimately move up if we want to. We want to see you move up. You have to. You cannot wait 76 basically more picks after your 3rd round selection to get back on the clock. That is an irresponsible way to go about this. We've been talking so much about what is irresponsible, what is responsible, the right way to go about building the roster, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where I ultimately kind of come down on where we're at with the Cowboys. Now we'll see what things look like when we're chatting on Thursday after my round at Spanish Bay. So hopefully I'm not beat up too badly. But right now, I do think the Cowboys are acting mildly responsible. Like not super responsible, but like they threw a party when their parents were gone and they're cleaning up, right? Like they didn't just leave the house in disarray. Like they're doing their best to at least make it look like they weren't up to trouble. Now, are they at home doing their homework and turning on all the lights and feeding the pets and everything while the parents are gone? I don't think so. I don't think they're acting that responsibly. But at the very least, they're not the biggest delinquents on the block, which is kind of a change of pace for them. And I know that all of this is frustrating, and I know that we don't want our expectations or whatever for the Cowboys to be this low, and we want them to be legit, and we want them to be like the Eagles or the Ravens or the Bills or the Vikings. The Vikings have been crazy. Or the Commanders. You think about what the Commanders have been doing this entire time throughout free agency and legal tampering and all this stuff. Yeah, that's the goal. There's no question, right? We want the Cowboys to ultimately be those adults, those responsible people, those responsible front offices, those high-achieving NFL front offices and high-achieving NFL franchises. But the reality of the situation is that right now they simply aren't there. They are crawling before they can walk. And we don't have to. You can do whatever you want. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But this is a process. I don't know that they'll ever get there. But what I do know is that this is technically better. This is technically an improvement. This is technically more than what they were doing at this time last year. I know how sad that sounds. I know how depressing it sounds. I know how embarrassing it is to say, well, they're not the biggest joke in the NFL, so I'm proud. I'm going to go buy my new jersey. I'm going to go buy whatever, because there are a lot of things that they should be doing still. There should already be a Micah Parsons extension done. They should be in on Cooper Kupp. They should be in on this cornerback market. They need a linebacker. They need a lot of other things, and you cannot just wait and just continue to do these one-year cheap prove-it deals and hope that you're getting all these bargains. You have the salary cap space. Getting a Micah Parsons extension done only creates even more for you to work with. So there is no reason, especially with 10 picks on your ledger now after the compensatory ones were announced, there's no reason why you can't be more active. And so that is our challenge. My hope is that by Thursday, when we chat again, that the Cowboys will have gotten a Micah Parsons extension done. I know that that's dreaming, that Cooper Kupp is on this team, that there is at least one new corner, maybe a second, that there's another linebacker, and heck, that maybe there's even another running back. I think that these are things the Cowboys could stand to do, and that they should do, and that they ultimately have to do. That is kind of the way that this has to go if they want us to take them even more seriously, which is obviously what we're hoping is the case sometime soon. But thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out. This was a lot of fun. I know it was a different situation, a different setup than normal. My name is RJ Ochoa. You can follow me on X, Instagram, or Threads at RJ Ochoa. TikTok is rj.ochoa. rj.ochoa@sbnation.com is how you can email me. You can also follow me right down below in the Bleacher Report app. If you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, like the video, tell a friend, share the link, etc., etc. This has been an interesting couple of days, and I hope that there are some interesting ones that follow. Thank you so much for hanging out, everybody. We will see you next time, and have a good one.